I've just experienced the most beautiful days of my life. After 8 months apart, me and my girlfriend just spent 9 days together. And they truly were the best days of my life. They were filled with love and care and connection and everything that I've ever wanted. And there was also one thing which I thought that I didn't want, which I've actually worked out that I do. And that was an argument that we had. And argument never sounds like the right word, because argument sounds like this thing that you want to avoid. Whereas what we had and all of the arguments that we've had in the past have brought greater awareness and greater clarity to our relationship. And I absolutely want that. And on this occasion, I said something totally ridiculous about my attraction to other women. And I'm currently justifying this in the framework that I had a conversation with a friend of mine who said that he had a similar conversation with his girlfriend around trust. And I suppose part of me was inspired by that. And I also wanted to kind of test the water with my girlfriend to kind of see where that would fit in with her, how that would align with her. And what I said was crazy, stupid and insensitive and unfeeling. And naturally, she was upset. And when my girlfriend gets upset, she shuts down. In fact, when I get upset, I shut down, or I get angry as well. But when she shuts down, it's very hard to reconnect with her. And I become very quickly aware that she's shut down, that something has changed. And in this case, I realized that I'd said something totally stupid, and I absolutely understood why she was upset. So there were no real defense mechanisms on my side. And when I see that she's upset, my desire is for us to return to that loving place, that place of harmony between the two of us. And I think in the past, or rather, I know in the past, I've had this desire for her to be okay as soon as possible. I want her to process everything in the moment, because that's what I feel like I do a lot of the time. And a big thing for me is processing through conversations. So conversations with my coach, with friends, with her, with my mother, with strangers. I find conversing a really great way to process through what's actually going on inside of me. But she doesn't feel comfortable to do so. When she gets upset or angry, she has learnt, as I think we all have, that it's not safe to show these emotions. It's not safe to show anger or sadness. And so a protective mechanism has come in, and it's protecting her by shutting her down, by not allowing her to experience anything and kind of numbing her out. And I really tried my best in that moment for us to reach a resolution. But what she needed was time. And this was at 11:30 in the evening. And one piece of advice I've heard around relationships, which has always stuck with me, is this idea of never going to bed in an argument. And this is something which I've always pushed for each time that we have found ourselves in a argument or a conversation like this. And we've usually come to resolutions before going to bed. But in this case, it seemed like that wasn't possible. So we went to bed. And I woke up maybe at 3 o'clock in the morning, and suddenly there was this story that started to kick in, which was reasons why I should be angry with her. And the way that it framed this for me was, it was saying, every time she asks me to change, I implement it as soon as possible. I take action and I try to change myself. And that's something which I want to do. I realize that it's something which doesn't serve me, a behavior perhaps that doesn't serve me, that doesn't serve her, that doesn't serve our relationship, and maybe even doesn't serve any of my interactions with other human beings. And so I take action to change. And I feel like I've done this on everything which she has brought to my awareness, all of these blind spots that I've had. And the frustration kicked in because I was telling myself this story that she wasn't changing this one thing which I'd mentioned doesn't sit right with me, which is her shutting down. And I realized that this is on a different level to other behaviors. So, for example, she mentioned several months ago that me being sarcastic all the time was not something that was serving her or our relationship. And I realized that that wasn't serving me in life. So that's something which I've tried to work on and I'm still working on now. Whereas this protective mechanism that she has coming in is on a much, much deeper level. And yet, I guess part of me felt like she doesn't even want to work on that, which again is another defense protective mechanism. So I started reeling through this story, and by the time the two of us were awake, we were both in defense mode. We had both shut down and we weren't engaging with one another. And maybe an hour or so later, after all of this avoidance, we came to each other and sat down on the bed and began to have further conversation. And I told her my frustration. I told her this story that had been going through my head and why I felt angry. And after I'd let her know how I felt, I was really, really exhausted. So I lay down on the bed and I just tried to become aware of what was going on. And for a moment, I observed the anger purely as anger. So without any story attached to it, I could just see that I was angry. And I knew that that wasn't serving me in that moment. I knew that wasn't serving her in that moment. And it took awareness in order to not let that story creep back in. But I was able to see through the anger, to be an observer and just see it there, and then to see the situation. And there was this freedom. And I had this thought in my mind that I need to consider what she needs in this moment instead of what I need in this moment. So I suggested that she go and take a walk, perhaps, or go to a cafe, or otherwise I could do the same as she stayed in the hotel room, so we could actually have some time apart to process. And she was concerned that we only had a few days left together and she didn't want to waste the time that we had. But I said, it's not a waste of time. We need to process, we need to have some time in order to let this dust settle. And when we came back together a couple of hours later, something had shifted. And we were able to reconnect. and return to that loving place. And there's this quote by John Gottman, which says, you can tell the health, the long-term health of a relationship by whether each cut heals to 99% or 101%. Do your relationships make you stronger? Or does your relationship make you stronger? And I really feel like these arguments that we have heal us, bring more awareness and more clarity to our relationship, help us communicate better with one another, and make us stronger. So I'm curious in terms of how that resonates with you and your experience in your relationship or relationships in the past. Do your relationships make you stronger? Oh, that's the video. I hope you're well. I'm sending loads of love your way. Take care.